All right, let's get the read on this age issue, whether it matters this time. Jenna Ellis is a Trump 2020 Advisory Board member. We got Kathy Aru back with us, and Jen Caudle, a family physician. So, doctor, if I can get to you, what do you look for when a candidate's a certain age, or we all do, at a certain age? You know, it's always said you lose your fastball, maybe you forget more things. When does that kick in? And please tell me it's a year older than whatever.
So this is the thing, there is no one size fits all, and that's probably the best thing about it, right? Is that everyone is so different. And I always say, age is sort of just a number in many ways. I literally saw a 99-and-a-half-year-old patient. He's one of my oldest patients some weeks ago, and he's mentally better than so many 67-year-olds that I have.
But is there a general rule of thumb, doctor, that it's one thing if you're in your late 50s, 60s, that's where we've gotten most of our presidents in that age range.
Sure.
That is decidedly different when they're in their mid or late 70s, let's say.
Well, there are going to be differences, absolutely, and there should be, right? We should be different people when we're 50 from when we're 70, but it doesn't necessarily rule out or rule in anything, and that's what I'm talking about, that everyone is so different.
But there are rigors to this office.
There are, but that's why people really have to be judged on not only their mental capacity, but their physical ability. It's called fitness. Everyone's fitness level is going to be different. It's genetically determined, it's environmentally determined, it depends on their medical conditions, the medications they're taking, and that's why I say, to say that there is an age or a cutoff or a moment or a time when bam, things change, well, that's false.
And my staff tells me that every day, like nicknames like Pops, Mr. Magoo. I don't need that.
No, you don't need that. You tell them that you don't need that too.
All right. We forget, though, Kathy, that age is a number in this respect. That sometimes we get it wrong, assuming someone we elect who's very young. We now know in retrospect that John F. Kennedy was dealing with Addison's disease and a host of other ailments in his early 40s. So it can hit anyone at any time, right?
And it's funny because the person who is the most hip, the hippest guy, is Bernie Sanders. Everyone feels the burn, and he gets the millennials excited. And he's the oldest one running. It's amazing.
Well, I get that here, the hunk thing and all that stuff.
Right? No. I mean, everyone at Fox calls you the hunk.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's a given. But it's also a gender thing, because when it came to age, it was a Hillary Clinton. Remember, she couldn't get out of the car. She was falling over a little bit. So it was a woman thing. They're not really talking about with the men. It's Bernie's hip. Hillary.
Oh, believe me, if they had seen a guy have trouble getting out of the car or whatever, they would have seized on that too, right?
But I didn't hear about it. We heard about Hillary and her health.
Because it didn't happen to a guy. But
it was
depends on the video.
It was interesting.
What do you make of all this?
Yeah, well, I would agree with Dr. Jen, but for a different reason. I mean, constitutionally speaking, for voters, the most important criteria in evaluating a president are that he is the commander-in-chief, he or she is the commander-in-chief of the military, and also for Supreme Court appointments. And so when we as voters are evaluating a candidate, we shouldn't be playing the identity politics that the Democratic left
But should age be a factor? If we knew in retrospect how, in the final couple of years of Franklin Roosevelt's life, how much he was hurting, and incredible, intestinal fortitude, would that have changed people's minds about re-electing him for a fourth term?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that it depends on what a president actually accomplishes, and it is individual to that person. And I mean, if you're looking, for example, at a pilot of an airplane, age, gender, race should not matter. It should matter their ability to fly the plane and land it safely. And so if we're evaluating...
But we don't have a lot of, older 70s, 80-year-old pilots going. Right?
Well, and it depends, again, I think fitness is a very apt term for that. And so if we look at
But there are general rules of thumb in some industries over 65, you're not going to do it.
But that's why you have the voters that have the individual evaluation. I mean, if they want to factor that in, they can, but I don't think that there should be a specific rule of thumb to say,
well, what do you look for then, doctor, when you're looking at someone, and I'm sure you just eye all the candidates as a doctor, make a political judgment.
Absolutely.
All right, this one seems to forget a lot. This one seems to have lost his or her fastball.
Well,
what do you look for?
Well, first of all, I'd caution about that, number one, because I doubt that we're seeing enough with the snippets that we see on TV and interspersed to be able to make that judgment. So I think it's probably erroneous to think that we can see the bits and pieces that we do and decide exactly where really someone is. That's the one thing I know about being a doctor, is you can't always judge a book by a cover. Let me be very clear about that. So that's the first thing. I also just want to bring up the point, because I know know we agree on this, but the idea of ageism, right? Because that's kind of what we're talking about,
Right.
is ageism, which really is discriminatory at the bottom line. I mean, the idea of judging someone's ability or discriminating against them or for them because of their age, that is something that is ageist. And
But should we be aware of it? That is the most pressure cooker
what we
job
should be
in the
aware
world,
of
right?
is their mental capacity and their physical fitness. That is what the ability to complete the job. That's what I feel, because once again, I'm going back to my 99-year-old, and he's not running for president, but I'm just saying, he has got the mind of a 60-year-old, where someone who's 65 may not. It's about the person.
Gonna really hurt Joe Biden, because he started out his campaign basically on an apology tour, apologizing for being an old white man. Ageism, racism, sexism, right there.
Even though there was
He's
nothing that
apologizing.
illustrated to the world that he,
Why
age
apologize for
notwithstanding,
that?
he's
I mean, I'm not
fine.
going to apologize for being a woman, being a millennial. You know, I mean, any of that. I
Well,
mean,
you should. For
So,
being
well, but I'm not the hunk like you,
I
so
got it.
that's okay.
Nixon and John F. Kennedy. Nixon, that comparison right there, it hurt Nixon.
Well, you know,
thought
and
that
they
he
were
looked-
roughly the same age. People forget that at the time.
It was funny
but-
though, because he didn't want to wear the makeup. Remember,
right.
he didn't want to wear the makeup. He looked sick. He looked old. And then John F. Kennedy, I'll put on
But
some
appearance, to
powder.
the doctor's
Reagan.
point, appearances do count for a lot, but you also start wondering about, are they up to the quick decisions they have to make? Does any of that go at a certain age, or the response time is longer?
So, you know, I would say that as a general rule, as we get older, to forget things here and there is not more uncommon. But remember, that has no necessary bearing on things like dementia and other cognitive deficits, which is really what you're talking about.
But do you remember, you're too young, but do you remember that they were raising this as Ronald Reagan? In his reelection in '84, he turned the tables on them by saying with Walter Mondale, I wasn't going to hold my opponent's youth and experience against him, and he made a joke out of it. But
Right.
it was raised then that maybe he was losing his
Yes,
attention to detail and all that. What do you look for?
So this is where I keep going back to.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is nothing to look for. That's the point.
Yeah.
We can't look at someone now and say they're this age. Oh, by the time they get this age, it's going to be a problem. We cannot do that, which is the very point behind the idea that some people live to 103 with no problems, can run around this block with no problems. There are 55-year-olds who couldn't do the same. It's not predictable in that way, and that's why we have to take each candidate for himself. Himself, because all these are men that we're talking about.
Real quickly, Kathy,
Yeah.
the two Democratic frontrunners, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, are
Right.
combined, I think, about 800 years old. So,
Yeah, give and take, yeah.
Many in the base of the party have told me that worries them. Forget about whether they're older white males. The image it will have for voters, that this is the best the party could do. And it might be perfectly sound,
Right.
but that there are a lot of younger people in this race as well.
Right,
What do you make of
weren't
that?
even born when
Right.
1972 when Biden was running.
Right.
So, but the thing is, it's funny that Bernie Sanders is right next to Ocasio-Cortez when it comes to views. So they're always compared, and we have like the youngest woman in Congress compared to Bernie Sanders. So it's almost that the views are fresh, not necessarily
You would also
the
be
age.
deemed too young, right? People criticize John Kennedy. Look, you're only 42 years old. Wait your
Right,
turn.
right.
They said that about Barack
But the
Obama. You're
ideas
45
are
years
what are-
old. Wait your turn.
But the ideas are what people are looking at, not
Yes,
necessarily
as what
the
we
age.
should. And I think it's actually, honestly, it's kind of inspiring. I mean, look how great it is. What this does is it tells you, regardless of who wins the presidency, you certainly can run. I mean, you can run in
It's
your
not
70s.
easy, and
It shouldn't be that's the greatest that the party has. It should be that the individual candidate that is a great American, regardless of age, regardless of
Fair
anything else.
Right.
Fair enough. I notice you guys all praise older people, and I deeply appreciate that from all of you. Fair enough.
Well, we all respect you.
There you go.
Coming from a 29-year-old host.
There you go. Oh, you are so coming back.